Welcome to Matt's Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thanks as always for stopping by. I'm deeply grateful. Look at this chart, a 100-year chart of the Dow Jones. This is Holger, a pretty extraordinary parabolic rise, as you can see. But don't forget, companies that didn't do too well fell out of the index. Companies that were performing entered in it. So it has a kind of bias to keep going up. The world faces first lost decade since the 1860s. This is the Bank of England governor saying that public support for open markets is under threat and rejecting them would be a tragedy but is a possibility. Home thoughts are like this from Lead Essay: there is only one race, the human race. Business, the US and China are racing to put humans on Mars, but Japan is more interested in Venus. I like the photograph of Venus. It seems to be taken quite close. And then I also like this from the artistic duo Tim Noble and Sue Webster. Forever glows with the vampiric passion of everlasting love. Saatchi Gallery, when I was last in London, I tried to get in there, but it was shut, much to my disappointment. Join us for more Christmas magic on the 9th, 15th, 22nd and 29th of December at 5:30 p.m. in the Piazza Minanelli. Valentino, it just was a very nice Christmassy scene. The quote of the day is from the Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi on announcing his resignation. Have a look. Apparently, and this is according to Fox News, and that's why I say apparently, China flew nuclear-capable bombers around Taiwan before the Trump call with the Taiwanese president. Less than a week before President-elect Trump spoke with Taiwan's president over the phone, China flew a pair of long-range nuclear-capable bombers around Taiwan for the first time, two US officials revealed to Fox News. The escort jets were used to collect radar information and conduct other surveillance on American allies, such as Japan. The Chinese bombers stayed in international airspace, according to officials. Wall Street Journal is saying Donald Trump's message sparks anger in China. Chinese officials late Friday, early Saturday played down Mr. Trump's precedent-breaking phone call with Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen, which a transition official said had been arranged by Bob Dole, the former Republican senator and presidential nominee. The call went beyond pleasantries and included a discussion about China and stability in the Asia-Pacific, according to a person familiar with the call. The Chinese directed their ire at Taiwan and not at Mr. Trump. But they signaled their displeasure with a series of Twitter posts Mr. Trump leveled at China over the weekend as he criticized its currency policies and military presence in the South China Sea. Chinese were also seeking guidance on Mr. Trump's policy intentions, and White House officials said they didn't know what they are, the administration official said. What you've seen in the past 8 years is possibly too much predictability from the US in its approach to China, said Christopher Johnson, a former senior China analyst at the CIA. A little unpredictability is a good thing, but too much is scary. There's a fine line there between good unpredictability and scary, and that's the balance that has to be found. I think Donald Trump is going to take a position which is far more adversarial when it comes to China, and in part the Putin outreach is part of that China triangulation. Syrian rebels set to lose another Aleppo district, this is according to Reuters, and there I think the Russians and the Syrians have now made their breakthrough. 2011 was when this all started, you'll recall. It is the same whether Allah blesses us with consolidation or we move into the bare, open desert, displaced and pursued. This is Adnani, a 39-year-old Syrian who ran the organization's propaganda shop and a secret foreign operations unit that recruited, trained and assigned elite forces to the toughest missions for IS. Fidel Castro is now interred in a rock, closing the last chapter on his historic life. My piece over the weekend was about the parabolic rebound of Vladimir Putin. At this moment, I said, Putin has Fortress Europe surrounded. He is the intellectual father of the new zeitgeist that propelled Brexit, Le Pen, the Five-Star Movement in Italy, Goethe Builders in the Netherlands. In the Middle East, it is Putin who's calling the shots in Aleppo, and in a quite delicious irony, looks as if he has pocketed OPEC as well. But I was talking about the election of President Trump because hindsight will surely show that Russia ran a seriously sophisticated program of interference, mostly digital. Then I quoted Don DeLillo, the specialist as monitoring data on his mission console, when a voice breaks in, voice that carried with it a strange and unspecifiable poignancy. I don't know why I find that so powerful. I think it's because I imagine that's exactly, if a voice came from the past, it would sound like that. He checks in with his flight dynamics and conceptual paradigm officers at Colorado Command. We have a deviate tomahawk. Of course, in my mind, that's Putin. We copy, there's a voice. We have gross oscillation here. There's some interference. I've gone redundant, but I'm not sure it's helping. We're clearing an outframe to locate source. Thank you, Colorado. It is probably just selective noise. You are negative red on the step function quad. It was a voice, I told him. We have just received an affirm on selective noise. We will correct Tomahawk in the meantime, advise you to stay redundant. The voice, in contrast to Colorado's metallic pigeon, is a melange of repartee, laughter, and song, with a quality of purest, sweetest sadness. Somehow we were picking up signals from radio programs of 50, 60 years ago. So I have no doubt that Putin ran a seriously 21st century, predominantly digital program of interference which amplified the Trump candidacy. Interesting report on The Guardian. This is a quote from the depths of the article. They can test for traces of explosive or any sort of shrapnel. If it was a high-speed forceful impact, which is what it looks like because the pieces are small and shredded, this is MH370. I wrote about it in August 2014 when I said the signal announcing the new arrhythmic normal was the disappearance of MH370. Talking about arrhythmia, and His Excellency Johann Borgstam told me the signal announcing this new arrhythmic normal was the disappearance of the MH370. Since then, planes have been falling out of the sky like flies. And the uncertainty around MH370 and MH17 is sharpened by the way the story is seemingly turned on and off. Took me back to Don DeLillo again. We're not witnessing the flow of information so much as pure spectacle, or information made sacred, ritually unreadable. The small monitors of the office, home and car become a kind of idolatry here, where crowds might gather in astonishment. In response to a tweet in the early morning about how Donald Trump is reshaping foreign policy, I said Twitter is the sharp blade of Donald Trump's foreign policy. First thing in the morning I wake up and I check it. Politico Al Gore on his meeting with Donald Trump, I found it an extremely interesting conversation. It would be clever if Trump appointed him as his climate czar. Ivanka Trump was closing a business deal in Japan when pictured with Donald Trump and Shinzo Abe. Indians mourn Jayalalithaa, a film star turned stateswoman. Let's move on to the currency markets. The euro-dollar staged a remarkable comeback. I'll come back to that. 107.42 last dollar index just above 100. Japanese yen 114.11. Swissy 1.0072. The pound 127.51. Remember, I was telling you it was going to start going up soon. Aussie 0.7461. India rupee 68.085. So that's improving as well. South Korean 111.71.52. The real 342.14. Egyptian pound 17.9476, South African rand a little bit firmer, 13.7773. Dollar index pulled back a little bit. I'll put up a 3-month chart. I said it would pull back, but I think it's a buy. Let's see where we settle down before we look to get in again. Strange day for Eurozone. Euro drops to a 20-month low and actually missed a 14-year low by a whisker only. Then rebounded, quickly reversed and gained most on the majors. And I think the sense was that Italy has always had a sort of very fluid political environment. And although Renzi had gone, it really didn't mean that much. So people started buying it back. It means a lot for the banks. However, the Italian banks are minus 50% this year, on course for a bigger fall than in 2011 at the height of the Euro debt crisis. Citibank makes a clarion call for commodity bulls with 2017 view. Bloomberg Commodity Index has advanced 11% in 2016 after a 5-year losing run that was spurred by a slowdown in China's growth and gluts in everything from copper to crude oil. This year, advances in raw materials have been led by zinc, nickel, copper, Brent crude and sugar. Let's have a look at gold. Where are we? Just below 1170. We're not going up there, I'm afraid. And those, notwithstanding the commodity complex, these will be underperformers for sure. Crude oil, last trading in New York at $51.82. I think it's going to top out. It's had a good rally. Take a look. I came across this article about Cristal. Champagne is a tête de cuvée, aka prestige cuvée, created in 1876 for the Russian Tsar Alexander II. Much later it became a favourite fizz of rappers. Most champagne houses, from grand marques such as Moet to grower producers like Jacques Salos, make at least one of these luxury cuvées. You spot them by their stratospheric prices, starting at about $150 and going into the thousands. Put up a few photographs of that. Take you back to the piece I wrote on the 12th of September this year, mirrors on the ceiling, the pink champagne on ice. And then this champagne sounded fantastic. It was pink as well. Aromas of wild strawberries, exotic smokiness, spicy and full-bodied, with notes of pomegranate, and I love pomegranate. Copper for delivery in 3 months rose 3.3% to just below $6,000 a metric ton. Copper is at a 17-month high, highest since June 2015. The metal is up 26% this year. Let's move on to Africa. 40 years of total control, how Dos Santos shaped Angola. Angolans endured a bloody civil war and extreme poverty. For nearly 40 years, power rested solely in the hands of the autocratic President José Eduardo dos Santos. State Radio's announcement on Friday that he will stand down next year appears to be the beginning of the end of one of Africa's longest reigns, and could open a new chapter for a country largely closed off to the outside world. When Dos Santos, now 74, became president in 1979, war was already raging between the MPLA and UNITA rebels, 4 years after independence from Portugal. Today, Angola has been at peace only since 2002 and is deeply scarred by a conflict that became a vicious proxy battleground in the Cold War rivalry of the United States and the Soviet Union. After fighting eventually ceased, a frenetic oil boom saw skyscrapers sprout up in the center of the capital, Luanda, and paid for nationwide infrastructure improvements. Millions of ordinary Angolans still living in dire slums. Collapse in oil prices has triggered a full-scale national economic crisis. In some ways, he is the father figure of the nation, widely seen, rightly or wrongly, as the man who ended the war. It wasn't a negotiated peace, it was brutal, but it is hard to see there was any other way. There's growing discontent among the educated middle class who see him as an autocrat and as a failure due to the economy. But in large parts of Angola, and especially in rural areas, a generation that suffered during the civil war still view him in a positive light. Marquez himself felt the sharp edge of the regime's intolerance, standing trial twice on defamation charges and given suspended sentences. Dos Santos didn't lead his country out of war. He was a warmonger who ruined his country and ransacked it for his family's profit, Marquez said. He has now run out of money. to maintain his patronage system, so he became far more vulnerable to pressure by his party to stand down. After 37 years of power and after all the oil money, all you see in Angola is a few flash buildings, the misery of the people, corruption, repression, and no freedom of expression. The most positive thing to happen would be to bring him to justice, but his departure won't mean the end of the regime. Gambia court frees prominent lawyer, 18 others who were jailed for protesting. You can see Gambian spring on its way. Padresh, US Embassy in Burundi, adds Bujumbura International Airport as potential target for regional terror groups in early December. I like this, that Padresh tweeted, Tanganyika's waters lap Tanzania, Burundi, DRC and Zambia. It is the longest freshwater lake in the world and the second deepest. South African all share down 1.93% this year, dollar versus rand a little bit firm on the rand side, 13.77. Egyptian pound versus the dollar around this 18 level. Rencap seems to think is very good value. He's got an equilibrium price of 14.5. Nigeria all share down 10.12% this year. President John Mahama seeks a second term in December, on the 7th of this, which is this week. Ghana expanded at the fastest pace in Africa, 14%. With the start of oil exports in 2011, the economy is projected to grow just 3.3% this year, the slowest in 2 decades. Critics from evangelical preachers to pop stars have lambasted Mahama's failure to solve a crippling energy crisis that resulted in routine 24-hour power cuts. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 22.59% this year. SFO probes Israeli billionaire ex-ENRC directors over the Congo. Interesting article in Bloomberg. UK Serious Fraud Office is investigating Israeli billionaire Dan Gertler and 4 former Eurasian Natural Resources Corporation executives as part of its 3-year probe into the Kazakh company's acquisition of copper and cobalt mining projects in the DRC. Do take a read, it's very interesting. Urban governance is the key to quality of life, says the Mail and Guardian. A new African futures paper forecasts that in 2030, Lagos, Cairo and Kinshasa will each have to cater for over 20 million people. Luanda, Dar es Salaam, Johannesburg will have crossed the 10 million mark. By 2035, close to 30 million people could live in Lagos, turning Nigeria's commercial hub into the largest megacity on the continent. At the same time, more than a third of Africa's urban population is expected to live in West Africa. Hunger stalks world's youngest capital as war nears 4th year. Food prices have risen 8-fold in the past year in Juba. That's a laboratory. Who wants Kenya's central bank governor out? Why? Asked the East African. Complained to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Agency last week, calling for investigation of the Central Bank of Kenya Governor Patrick Njoroge over alleged abuse of office as the latest move in what is seen as a campaign to kick him out of office. It has been indeed a campaign. The complaint, filed by a law firm owned by Ahmed Nasser Abdullahi, acting for his Nairobi Law Monthly publication, raises questions about decisions the governor took on Imperial, Dubai and Chase banks, which had been placed under receivership. Mr. Abdullahi accuses Dr. Njoroge of holding extra statutory power from a political power grid he is connected to, while specifically targeting certain banks owned by minority communities in the country. We know these people, driven by the cartels, are planning an avalanche of legal suits and measures against the bank and the governor. We will respond to these suits according to the law, the source said, adding that the cartels had been frustrated the cleaning up of the sector and resorted to legal mercenary tactics to frustrate the CBK and intimidate the governor. Outside legal circles, the East African is in communication about intentions to target Dr. Njoroge for removal from office. The problem we have here is that the governor is incorruptible with money. He has no known investments or business interests where he can seek favours. He doesn't value business from our investments perspective, and his only corrupt nature is his ego. Yes, we know he enjoys the security of tenure, but we also know the legal loopholes to use to have him out, a source with interest in the banking sector told East Africa. They have engaged public relations experts, this is the interesting point I want you to remember, who are controlling the social media in this onslaught. Fortunately, Dr. Jorobi is a man who minds his business, doesn't socialize, so it doesn't concern him as much as it would to those people who want to be socially accepted. Now, go back to that point, what was it about? Controlling the social media onslaught. And these are 2 points. First thing is plausible deniability. And I said some folks here need to remember those words. If you go and look at the social media campaign, it's totally linear. No one is able to respond. It repeats itself on a continuous basis. So that's the first point. And so it's very linear. And the second thing is non-linearity. You have to learn how to navigate a linear system, the new 21st century digital ecosystem, in a non-linear way. And this is a little bit like the campaign has been like the Mombasa social media campaign, where 100 bots repeat the same thing verbatim. I've said Dr. Jorobi, who's the governor of the Central Bank of Kenya, is a Roman Catholic and a numeracy member of Opus Dei. Therefore, the first point to note is that launching a real-time linguistic warfare campaign on the governor of the Central Bank at this juncture is inaccurate, unfair, and in fact inimical to the national interest. And their national interest being the main goal, which is a robust banking sector optimized to propel Kenya into the future. I still think, as I wrote on the 30th of May, that he is the real deal. Have a look at that article, and have a look at the Mind Speak session that he did earlier in the year. Beautiful view of Upper Hill, Nairobi. This photograph's by Terry Wanderi, and it is. We were up there not too long ago for a British High Commission function, and we decided to stay the night in the Radisson Blu. And as I looked outside, I thought, where am I? I felt like I was somewhere like Manhattan. Insurers transfer deposits from banks to treasuries. This is the flight to quality. Nairobi all shares down 6.6% this year. The Nairobi NSE 20 is down 20.06% this year. Once again, thank you as always for stopping by.